Senator from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I just want to indicate also that there is a lot to think about here when we're looking at artificial intelligence, and a lot of very serious questions that we've got to figure out. And I'm really pleased that we're seeing this bipartisan initiative in the Senate. Senator Schumer, our majority leader, coming forward, but also with other colleagues as well that are really helping us go through briefings and really look at all the questions, because it is very serious in terms of the questions. Something we have to deal with. It's not going away, but certainly there's a lot that we've got to figure out in all of this. But Mr. President, I come to the floor today, first of all, to say that, as everybody in this chamber knows, I'm extremely proud to be from Michigan. We are the state of innovation. We built the automobile assembly line, and the American middle class as a result. In Michigan, we make things and we grow things. Just take a look at recent headlines. Ford chose Marshall, Michigan as the site of a new battery plant. It's expected to create 2,500 jobs when it opens in 2026. In June, I was at the groundbreaking for a new UL Solutions battery lab in Auburn Hills. Their work is going to improve the batteries that go into electric vehicles like my Bolt, which I love. Hemlock Semiconductor, a proud Michigan company that manufactures products used in the semiconductor and the solar industries, is expanding its plant, creating an industrial park, creating 170 new jobs, and I expect a lot more jobs coming after that. And we're attracting businesses from Europe and around the world. This spring, the Norwegian company Nel Hydrogen announced that it's building a manufacturing plant in Michigan that's going to create more than 500 jobs. Exciting things are happening, and not just in Michigan, all around the country. All across the country, manufacturing facilities are opening, small businesses are launching, and folks are headed to work at good-paying jobs. This past month, 209,000 jobs were created. 209,000 jobs were created last month, which is 13.2 million jobs created since President Biden took office. And this is in less than 3 years, less than 2.5 years, about 2.5 years, I guess. And we are now seeing an unemployment rate that is 3.6%, under 4% for the last 17 months in a row. 17 months in a row. 13.7 million jobs being created, and about 2.5 years coming out of a pandemic and all that have surrounded that, with supply chain breakdowns and all of the challenges. And yet, because of what we are doing, we are seeing the strength in the underlying economy. That's the longest stretch in over 50 years when we look at the unemployment rate. The longest stretch in over 50 years, Mr. President, 50 years. And the highest number of Americans aged 25 to 54 are now in the workforce, the highest number since May of 2002. The percentage of women who are working set a new record for the third month in a row. Wages are up, inflation's going down, it's down at the lowest level in 2 years. We've got more to do, but it's going in the right direction. This is Bidenomics in action. This is not by accident that all of this is happening. We are growing our economy from the middle out and bottom up, not the top down. It's the opposite of trickle-down economics. It's the opposite, not giving everything to those at the top, the very wealthy, who can then take their dollars and go anywhere in the world and be able to invest in a race to the bottom on jobs, which is what we have seen from decades, which, by the way, got us the supply chain problems when over half of the chips going into our automobiles and other electronics were made from one company in Taiwan. We're now turning that around. We're making smart investments in America, including in our infrastructure, rebuilding America, in manufacturing, in clean energy, and actually making sure we are saying, if you want those tax credits that we want to support you to create those jobs, you have to make it in America. You have to make it in America, not just take the dollars from America and put them somewhere else. You have to actually make it in America. That's what we are doing. We're empowering American workers through higher wages and better training, more support for unions. We're lowering costs for the things that Americans need, starting with prescription drugs, by the way, capping the cost of insulin per month at $35 for our seniors and people on Medicare. And we are laser focused to do more, by the way, to make that cap for everybody who is on insulin, and all the other changes to bring down healthcare costs, prescription drug costs, laser focus on taking on the drug companies to be able to do that. And we're making sure small businesses have the support they need. I'm excited that we've seen the largest number of Black small businesses being created in the last couple of years. We're seeing so many more opportunities for entrepreneurs, for small businesses across the country that are so much a part of the backbone of our economy. So we're seeing that as well. I mean, we're basically seeing what we call Bidenomics because it is growing the middle class. It's aiming at the American middle class. It's saying we want to support you, but the jobs have to be here in America. We want to rebuild and invest in America for the future. And all of our technologies, from high-speed internet to our roads and bridges and airports and rail and all the other things that will allow us to be leading the pack in a global economy and competing. We want to bring those jobs home, and then we are laser focused on lowering costs for folks. And if that means taking on the oil companies or taking on the drug companies, so be it. But we are laser focused on bringing down costs. And that's what Bidenomics, Mr. President, is all about. Bidenomics. Opposite of trickle-down. Opposite of trickle-down. Meanwhile, what are our Republican colleagues doing? Unfortunately, the same thing they've been doing for decades. By the way, they've never met a problem that a tax cut for the wealthy wouldn't solve. I remember so many times when the economy was doing well 20 years ago, oh, we should do a tax cut for the wealthy. And then the economy was down, and then we had Wall Street crash, and oh, we should do a tax cut for the wealthy. Doesn't matter what the problem is. The solution is a tax cut for the ultra wealthy of the country, with the idea that it will trickle down. And unfortunately, what's happened with that never trickled down, at least not to people in Michigan. We're still waiting for it to trickle down, but it did blow up the deficit. It did blow up the deficit. In fact, 25% of all of the debt accumulated by the country ever was in 4 years of President Trump. 25% of all of the deficit and debt created ever in the country was under 4 years. And the 2017 Trump tax giveaway exploded the deficit. That's why that was happening. Exploded the deficit by nearly $2 trillion, gave the ultra wealthy massive tax breaks. So we come out of this manufactured crisis around the debt ceiling and taking the country to the edge of default and all the talk about how much debt we have. And then as soon as that gets resolved and President Biden brings everybody to the table and there's a bipartisan agreement not to have our country crash and default because of, unfortunately, the manufactured antics on the other side. But what happens next? Our House Republican colleagues have a new tax package. It's like after talking about the debt and the deficit, they turn around again and want another tax cut for the wealthiest and the largest corporations. In fact, big oil would get another $10.5 billion tax break under their latest tax cuts, on top of embedded tax breaks that have been there for 100 years with big oil. You know, these tax breaks are supposed to help folks get started in the industry, and I think they're pretty much established in our country after 100 years of this. But no more. No, $10.5 billion tax break in addition now is what's being proposed in the House. Their proposal would roll back clean energy tax credits that are creating jobs. The things I listed at the very beginning as I was talking all relate to the focus on investing in clean energy and saying it has to be a production tax credit. So you don't get it unless you are making this in America. And this is key. This has not been happening for decades, and it's now happening. So they want to roll that all back, roll back all the things we're trying to do to combat the climate crisis, which is hitting us over the head every single day, you know, destroying homes and creating havoc and costing lives, and all that's happening because of excess carbon pollution that is in the atmosphere and has been here for as long as we have been using fossil fuels. I wish the oil companies would take some of the hundreds of billions that they have been given on tax break and put it back into technology to stop pollution. That would be very helpful if that's where they had put that. But instead, what they've done is put it into funding efforts to say the climate crisis isn't real, that it's all a hoax, everybody's making it up, and we see where we are today, because it's not made up. Never was made up. And if when they got the first tax breaks 100 years ago, if they'd put part of that into technology to make sure that what they were doing was not polluting the atmosphere, we wouldn't even be here today talking about the climate crisis. And certainly, Mr. President, in what's happening in your home state of Vermont, you see it have a story to tell now that's extraordinary about what has happened on the weather and all the damage. So our Republican colleagues want to roll back all the efforts right now to try to clean up things, cleaner environment. They want another big tax break for big oil. They're going to endanger about 150,000 good-paying jobs, and on top of that, it would balloon the deficit again by another $300 billion just over the next 3 years. If the Republicans extend all of the Trump tax giveaways, we would add another $2.5 trillion to the deficit if they got what they have been proposing. So again, we have tried trickle-down economics. With tax breaks for those at the top, slashing investments for America, shipping good jobs overseas. That has been the strategy, or the result of the strategy. Not that they were saying, oh, we're going to ship jobs overseas. No, they just let it happen by giving tax breaks to folks who did that with no accountability. So that's trickle-down economics. Now we have what we are proudly calling Bidenomics. Investments in America, empowering workers, lowering costs, and helping small businesses. And it's actually working. Let me go back to the front. It's actually working when we look at just last month, 209,000 jobs, and every month there's a jobs report. More jobs, more jobs, more jobs. 13.2 million jobs created in the last 2.5 years. That's real. That's economists talking about that. Good paying jobs for people. Jobs you can raise a family on. 3.6% unemployment rate, under 4% for the last 17 months, the lowest in 50 years. So it's not about just debating rhetoric back and forth. What we have is something that has never worked, which is trickle-down economics, but used over and over and over again. Well, I shouldn't say it never worked. It never worked for the majority of people. It never grew the middle class. It worked for a few people. It worked for a few people really, really well. But it's not worked for the majority of Americans. And now we are turning and saying, let's focus on something that does. Investing in America, bringing jobs home, tackling the big special interests that are causing all our costs to go up, like the drug companies and the oil companies, and bring down the costs. And by the way, the engine of our economy, small businesses, let's make sure we are laser focused on helping our small businesses. So, Mr. President, we've tried Republicans' trickle-down economics. Surprise, it didn't work. Never worked. The wealthy keep buying bigger yachts, while everybody else is left treading water. Bidenomics is different. It's investing in us, all of us. It's investing in our shared future. It's growing the middle class, and it's working. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.